Hello and welcome back to Coffee with Police Experts, ILETA 2022 edition. For Police Magazine, I'm Doug Wyllie here in St. Louis, Missouri with my friend Lon Bartel.
As well, man.
Good to see you, brother.
You as well.
How's things? We talked a little bit offline before we turned the camera on here, and I'm fascinated by this topic. What can we learn and what can we transfer from sports and training in particular in sports to the law enforcement universe, to the realm of policing on the street? And there's so much that goes into, I mean, we can go into sports analogies from here until next Tuesday, but when we just look at the practice of practice in sports, it's fascinating where you can go.
Well, and I'm going to back up even further. The reason this became such a big issue for me is before this whole cop thing, my background is actually in exercise and sports medicine. Mm-hmm. My master's degree and my bachelor's degree is in applied exercise physiology, so I work with athletes. And I was training athletes, and not just the conditioning component of, okay, how do I get you bigger, stronger, faster, but how do I improve the skills?
Yeah.
So I got into law enforcement, and I'm like, okay, all the stuff I know about sports psychology and performance and athletes, I'm sure, because of how critical all that stuff is, when I get in the academy, I'm going to see that, right? And we know that athletes are winning trophies and rings and championship belts and that kind of stuff. The law enforcement officers are dealing with people's lives, so I'm sure all the science is going to be it. And I get in the academy, and not at all. Everything that we knew about training athletes from the 70s had not made it into an academy setting.
Yeah,
you know,
in the 2000s and 2010s.
Well, yeah, and I went through the academy in 1997, but I'm like, you know, which not yesterday, but the point being is,
it seems like it, perhaps.
Yeah, right? That none of the science was there. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to make it through the academy. And this is just a processing thing. And when I get into advanced officer training, then I'm sure that I'm going to see the science behind what we know about athletic training. Mm-hmm. I'm sure I'm going to see it in AOT. No, not at all. It wasn't until I got to the SWAT community that I started to see a little bit of it. And one of the biggest reasons is you started seeing a lot of performance coaches work with some of the special operations community in our military, and that would start to bleed over. So when we had some individuals that were assigned to certain specific teams,
fill in the blank,
right. So some of the training methodologies that they were exposed to became indoctrinated into their training, and you started seeing it differentiate out into a law enforcement setting. But it started, like I said, it was predominantly in the SWAT world. And I'm still not seeing that, right? And like one of my biggest complaints is block training is still like overwhelmingly the methodology on how we train people's skill sets.
Or lack thereof, really.
But it's horrible for long-term transfer. It doesn't. We know it doesn't transfer to novel events, it doesn't transfer to competition, and we also know that it doesn't have long-term transfer. Mm-hmm. It doesn't stick with us, but that's still how we do majority of the training. I'm going to do the same skill over and over and over and over again, and then I'm going to go do another skill over and over and over. And we get what's called the illusion alerting. There's a book called Make It Stick. Phenomenal book. Every instructor should get a copy of it. I didn't write it, so I ain't making any money on it, but Making It Stick, and it talks specifically about this. But that block training, you get the illusion of improvement because I'm doing the same thing over and over again. The problem is it doesn't last. And when I call on that skill set in a tense, uncertain, rapidly evolving event or a novel event, it's not there.
Yeah, and because you're not mixing everything together. In a real world event, and real world incident, you're going to go from this skill to that skill to this skill to that skill to the next one, all in the span of exactly as much time probably as it took for me to say it.
Correct. Yeah, big difference.
Everything from decision making to squeezing the trigger to arrest and control to writing a report. And everything got done here. All of those skills in a very, very short span of time.
Right. The other big issue we run into is we train too perfectly.
Yeah.
Right. I go to the range, sun at my back. I got my camel pack. My hair is perfectly gelled when I had hair. Sunglasses, a lot of other stuff, and I'm draw fire 2 rounds, bang bang. Draw fire 2 rounds, bang bang. And it's like, okay, well, where's the error in training that we have to overcome? Because in a competitive athletic event, because of the uncertainty involved, there's error. You know, I got to hit somebody with a baton. In a training environment, you're going to give me a pad, they're going to hold it on their leg, and it's going to be in the perfect position. I've never used a baton in real life where I got that.
Yeah.
I had to be able to change position, get the move, get the position I need, change my foot position to be able to get the hit.
Yeah.
That is error that I have to overcome.
Yeah.
But we don't do that. So I started, like the stuff that I do in the simulator, we'll use BOSU balls, which is an athletic, training ball, but I'll flip it upside down. So the rubberized portion hits the ground and you have a flat platform. I'm like, all right, shooter, get up on top.
Get on that.
So now I have a balance component.
It's like being on a boat.
That they have to overcome. So I'm inducing error.
Yeah.
That they still have to perform the basic skill sets, right? Basics of marksmanship, but I'm forcing an error situation. And that error situation in a BOSU ball is easy, and it's a controlled environment. The error has to be there. If we don't induce it, we don't induce the obstacles in a training environment, how do we really expect people to overcome it in an actual event? And training is where you want to do it. Training is where we want to create those obstacles. Instability and weird positions and
the unexpected.
Yeah. Figure out how to overcome it.
So when you take this out and you're with VirTra, you're going out, and let's say for example, you're going to a brand new agency where VirTra's now been installed, you've got the systems in place, you've had the people who are going to be doing the training at that institution, at that organization. Now you got to talk to them and say, this is how we want you to do it. How do you explain it to them?
Yeah, well, we get two components. First, I got to hit the basics.
Yeah.
Because our system's complex because of all the stuff that it does. And I got to get you to understand that. And then we start working into the training protocols. And it's tough because the only two things cops hate is change and the way things are. Right? So if I show up somewhere and I'm like, I want you to change how you do stuff, and here's my rationale why, you get a lot of resistance to that. And we have an ATCC, or Advanced Training Certification course, that we do actually at VirTra. It's a week long. Day one is the science of simulation, and we get into all the reasons why. We get into all the science of sim and sports psychology and a bunch of other stuff, but we say, hey, look, we really need to start talking about the method of how we instruct and why.
Yeah.
But it's hard for people to change, and people. Our training programs are based on the 3 Ps that I call it. It's either personality, preference, or performance. Mm-hmm. So an agency might have a big name personality, XYZ, whoever they are, that they want to follow, and they go, hey, so-and-so who was a chef on a Navy boat, right, taught us this, and that's what we're going to do. Or you get preference, and preference can be everything from the chief. He prefers XYZ. Right. And I have seen some stuff where preference is problematic. There's some conflict of interest where so-and-so range master is a competitive shooter who's also sponsored by X company, and now X company is the new rifle that's coming in. I'm going, I'm hoping that's above board, but and then finally performance. But if we're not tracking performance benchmarks, how do we really know what the performance is? Mm-hmm. Do you know, as an individual, how long it takes you on average to draw and fire 2 rounds from a holster at 7 yards? Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't you know? Why shouldn't you know? Yeah. Because now I keep when I was working with athletes, you had a performance journal.
Oh yeah.
This was your training log. We tracked what you did for the day, your week. If I was working on a strength base, we're going to specifically talk about what your poundage was, in other words, how much weight you're moving. If we're really going to work on explosive dynamics, like type of plyometrics, how many foot touches, because we deal with the impact stress. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to track all of that, and I'm going to keep your performance. All right, we're going to go do a 40. Here's your time on your 40. Here's your vertical, blah, 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 blah. Well, why don't we track that with officers? Yeah. My ability to draw and fire 2 rounds from the holster at 7 yards is out of the holster in 1.85 seconds. Well, why would I want to know that? Mm-hmm. And now I have a benchmark for myself. I want to beat that. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise we don't have a goal setting, another aspect of athletic performance. If I don't have a goal, what am I striving for? I'm just going to engage in rote practice, which is the same thing over and over again. You also have what's called an expertise reversal effect. If you're not pushing your experts, if you're not pushing your people that are high quality and performers, mm-hmm. they degrade. Yeah. So I want a benchmark, and your benchmark can be different than mine, and that's okay. Yeah. I understand the concept minimum standard. Why not an individual standard for myself? Mm-hmm. Hey, you know what? I can draw, fire 2 rounds, conduct a tactical magazine exchange in X amount of seconds. Okay? Can you speed that up? Mm-hmm. Can you do it without looking to your back pouch? Mm-hmm. Right? Let's talk about all the performance indicators that we want to look at and start building it in as A, here's my journal to know where I'm at, mm-hmm. and B, here's my goals to know where I'm going. Yeah. But we don't do that.
Yeah. And getting back to VirTra in specific, there's a lot of things that can be now done exactly as you're doing here in the simulated environment, and you just transliterate that out to other things. You just take that exact same principle and process, and you take that into, let's say, square rings, let's say mat room, let's say classroom. Yep. All those same principles and processes
are
applicable anywhere.
Yeah, I'm not talking just simulator. I'm talking training in general, right? speed cuffing, right?
Yep.
Let's say that an individual is able to go from initial contact with somebody in a speed cuff position to fully cuffed in 2 seconds. It's a great performance benchmark. Can you beat it? Why not strive to beat it? So now, the whole component of adding some competition, even if it's self-competition, adds to my arousal level. Right, so now I have the activity of hypothalamus, pituitary adrenal gland, that whole HPA concept of what occurs to me when I get in a stressful event, and I'm now dancing in the world that I need to be able to perform in, right?
Yeah.
So that even with that self component, so speed cuffing can be done that way. There's so many things. It's not just, don't get me wrong, do what I do with the simulation because I can manipulate so many factors in that environment, but it's not just that. It's high-risk vehicle stops, DT, all kinds of things. All the stuff that I'm talking about applies to any skill set. Figure out what the goals are. Goals should be measurable so that I know what they are. Then from there, I want to set a new goal. My goal should be attainable, right? I mean, and those are all things, but I can set them, but I need a way to track them, and we don't do that.
We should.
I agree.
Yeah. Lon, I want to thank you very much for your time today and for everything that you're doing for law enforcement.
I appreciate it.
Very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Once again, come back next time for more Coffee with Police Experts. On behalf of Police Magazine, I'm Doug Wyllie.